Great evening, everybody. Great evening, and welcome to another episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, sponsored by Empowerment Perspective. And as always, I'm with one of my favorite people, Mr. Roland Walker. Soon to be joining us real soon is Mr. Chris McClellan. Listen, man, I just want to extend a warm welcome and greeting to you, my brother. How are you, my friend?
Really, I'm doing great, but I'm tired, so I'm over here drinking my coffee, cutting that grass in this Texas heat to kill you, man.
Listen, man, you got to be careful like that, man. Drink plenty of water. You know how it was when we was in the army, brother.
I know.
Yeah. Listen, man, I just want to extend my sincerest thank yous to everybody who's been participating with us. All of my people in the chats that's been just adding value to the conversations that we've been having. All of the people who are actually just watching our content, man, we greatly appreciate you. We loving your feedback. I mean, just last week, Ro, just to share a little bit of information, man, we had over 110 people look at our last episode. Isn't that just phenomenal, brother?
Okay, definitely.
Yeah. And again, it's just because of the value that you guys bring to the show, man. So I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you to all the people in the chat. I just want to say thank you to each and every person who add value and share this information. Because again, I want to start off by saying we are doing this simply because we want to add value to others and help each and every person that actually listens to the things that we're talking about. Now, that being said, welcome, Joe. Good to see you, brother. That being said, the topic of the night is identity. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is one of those topics that it took me a few years to get a grasp on. But brother, when I got a grasp on it, man, my whole thought process just skyrocketed from there. And so tonight we're going to talk about defining our son's identity. So that being said, Ro, just kind of like from your perspective, when you first heard about this topic, or once you first got the concept that identity to you as a man was important, like what was one of the first things that came to your mind?
One thing that came to my mind was the times that we're in today.
Yeah.
And even when let me see, can I say, well, close relative of mine went to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like spouse therapy. And while they were in therapy, she was talking to the therapist about defined roles. Mm-hmm. And the therapist made sure to tell her that we don't really define roles right now. We allow each individual to define their role. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to a man's responsibility or a woman's responsibility, they leave it up to the people themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. But I think that's how our culture is going. We allow everybody to, well, I don't like this, so I want to roll like this, and I want to allow this, that, and the other. When in actuality, if you have defined roles from the beginning, you have a certain paradigm where you want to stick to,
right,
instead of just being thrown out there to the wolves.
I like where you're going with that, right? Because I agree with you 100%. I've heard on several occasions where people kind of they combat the idea of gender roles. And before I get into this, let me apologize to everybody because I'm traveling, so I don't have my normal setup, so I don't have the bright lights and all that good stuff. So just bear with me over here. If my image freezes for a reason, that's the only reason. But I'm still with you guys. Um, but back to what you were saying, Roland. I like what you're going. I like where you're going here because I've heard where there has been a very distinct idea to combat the concept of gender roles. And whatever a person chooses to do, I, for one, am perfectly okay with it. But what I'm hearing you say is that our understanding of our identity helps us to define our roles in different relationships, whatever that relationship look like, right? Whether we're talking husband and wife, whether we're talking, friends, whether, whatever that looks like. Am I kind of like on track with what you're saying?
Oh, you hit it on the head.
Okay.
Because when you don't have roles that state exactly what your job is, it's like whenever you went into a job, they gave you a job description.
Yeah.
Now, as long as you covered everything within that job description, you were okay. Now, if you went outside of that, that's where you went wrong. Now, when you don't have a job description, pretty much you have to make it up as you go.
Right.
And that's where we are in society. We are making it up as we go.
Man, that is so good. And you know what? I'm agreeing with you 100%. I think we're spot on, you and I. And when I say spot on, I mean in sync. Not necessarily saying that our answer is the
Right.
perfect measure of correctness. Just saying that you and I are in sync when it comes down to that. Here's one of the analogies I like to use because you and I, we're basketball fans. So we can sit and talk about basketball, and different players and those different teams that have equated to what we understand to be greatness. And one of the first teams, and you know this well, being a fellow native of Detroit, one of the first teams that come to mind in basketball is the Chicago Bulls, the Michael Jordan era of the Chicago Bulls, so not just any other ones, just those teams. Those teams were great. It literally equated to a dynasty. And you understand that first and foremost, everybody knew who Jordan was. You may struggle to know who some other people were on the team. You may, Scottie Pippen. You may know, a Bill Paxton here and there. You may know, some other players on the
Steve
team. But
Kerr, Dennis
yeah,
Rodman,
yeah,
Horace
absolutely.
Grant. See, I
See,
know them all.
see,
Yeah.
there you go. There you go. That's his roots, right? And so the idea, and for those people who don't necessarily know basketball, but football, the Patriots had a dynasty. And again, you knew who Tom Brady was, but you didn't really know who all the other players were, but you knew who Tom Brady was. And so what I've learned over the years is that everybody wants to be Michael Jordan or everybody wants to be Tom Brady. But what they did not realize is that Michael Jordan and Tom Brady understood their roles when it came down to their place on that team. And so when they understood their role, they played within the confines of their role. Everybody else played their roles. So, like you said, that job description, right? That job description helped me to understand my left and right limits. And within the boundaries of that left and right limits, I can find my version of greatness. And in that, no one else is expecting to do my job. They're expecting me to do my job, and I'm expecting them to do their job. So
Mhm.
I like where you're going with this because I agree 100%. Because who we are, knowing who we are, kind of helps us to understand number one, our responsibility and how we can help somebody else within the scope of that responsibility as well. So I love this. Brother Chris, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you today, sir?
I'm well.
Yeah,
I'm well. Thank you again for allowing me on the platform. I appreciate it.
We,
listen,
we,
man.
we got we got a new look, Chris.
I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. I did not have a choice.
Oh my goodness.
I said it on Vic's show Tuesday. I felt dirty. Like I couldn't get past the ugly stage, so I just let it go.
Amen.
Let it
I have no complaints whatsoever, my friend. I've been bald for over 20 years and I've embraced it. So welcome to the club.
I
So
appreciate it.
you're welcome, man. So we're talking about defining our son's role. And Gaddy got jokes. So we're talking about defining our son's roles, right? And so in essence, the first phase of this conversation, and Roland brought up the idea of gender roles, right? Well, he kind of brought up roles, really. I kind of made it the gender role thing. but just defining roles, understanding who you are with, in yourself, so that you can understand the role that you play. So for you, if you don't mind me asking, sir, when you seen this idea, defining your son's identity, and when you first got the awareness that identity is important, what was kind of like some of the thoughts that came to your mind?
Um, having an uncomfortable conversation,
Mm,
to be honest,
mm,
because I'm a product of a single mom home.
yeah,
So finding my identity meant that I had to go ask some uncomfortable questions,
yeah.
and I had to get the answers from somebody that I've never really like met before.
Mm,
Hmm.
that's good. That's good.
So, and I had to be open-minded about it,
Yeah.
because a lot of men that are in our position really don't want to have that conversation, because they don't want to change how they look at their mom.
Mm,
You understand what I'm saying? It
I do.
in some cases it kind of feels like disrespectful to have that conversation, because he's going to tell it from his side, and his side might not be pretty,
Yeah.
but you have to let go of that and go into it with an open mind. So that was my first thought. I'm like, oh boy, okay, what am I about to get into? And I can't look at what he says as disrespectful to my mom, because he's telling his story, just like my mom beat the story into my head for the whole time that I was under her roof.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So
I,
that was really my first thought. I'm like, okay, what am I about to walk into? And one, am I even gonna be able to handle it? Am I even ready for this conversation? I know I need to have it, but am I really ready for this?
yeah.
So that was
Man.
really thought number one.
Mm. Man, I love that because you started something, right? And
Hmm.
I thought in my mind, I'm gonna wait a few minutes before I dive into it. But you know what, brother, you open the can, and I kind of want to set the conditions to go there, because one of the things I learned for me when I realized that roles, not just role, but my identity was important, just so I can have a good understanding on how to be the person that I was destined to be the person that people expect me to be. It kind of goes back to me reading and studying the Bible. And I'm not trying to turn this into a spiritual conversation, as for my audience, but I want to make sure that I make this make sense, because everybody knows the story of Moses going into Egypt to free the Israelites, but there was a conversation that took place before that actually happened. And Moses had a conversation with God. He said, "Who am I that I am to go unto Pharaoh?" So, in my opinion, what I believe is that the most eye-opening portion of that the conversation was, "Who am I?" So he was looking for a response from God to help him to understand that he was equipped to do the thing that he was supposed to do. And I think, my friend, that kind of gets after what you're saying, because for me, I needed to come to grips to understand that I was a perfect baked cake. I'm gonna go that route, right? I was the baked cake of ingredients that includes some ingredients that came from my mom and some ingredients that came from my dad. And so if I did not understand the ingredients that was in placed in me that came from my dad, then I am missing a large portion of my identity. And I will only move forward based upon the information that I have that came from my mom, while not necessarily denying, but just completely unaware of the information that came from my dad. And
Like
what
you're
I'm
oblivious to it, and you don't even know you're
absolutely,
oblivious to it until you realize you need that information.
absolutely, absolutely. Go ahead, Roland.
And that's how most family, well, black families, because white families will say, "Is that your half brother, half sister?" Black people don't care. We got the same mama, that's my sister. We got the same daddy, that's my sister.
Right.
And we grow up where, as a family, this is from my experience. You are always closer or in more contact with your mother's side of the family. The father
Mm,
side, You may see them, you may not,
Yeah.
depending on how ingratiated with that family your mother is.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time with my mother's side of the family. You know, all
Yeah.
the cousins going over there doing all this, and we would see at events my father's side,
Yeah.
but we going to spend the night with my mother's side.
Yeah.
So when it comes to roles and everything, my grandmother would always say, "You ain't got to spend the night nowhere. You got a house."
Right.
And I grew up in a house full of women.
Yeah.
So this is my great grandmother. Her coming out of where she came from, she made me understand that it's my job to do everything outside the house, chores.
Mm.
She made those girls clean up inside, do dishes, vacuum, and all these things. Now today, people would be like, "Well, there shouldn't be any roles," but it made me understand that my level of responsibility was a little greater than theirs.
Mm.
I got to take the heat. I got to do this. Now she would tell if I'm walking around in my little Fruit of Balloon drawers, she would say that. But
Yeah.
let them walk around in some panties. Oh, she going in
Yeah.
because she understands that men are visual people and they look. And she would say, "Ain't no man gonna want you. You just walking around like whatever." Not that she would lessen who I am, but she understood that men, if you have a job and you have your own money and you have your own stuff, you can get a woman. But
Easily.
a woman who doesn't have anything and ain't cleaning the house, ain't doing this, that, and the other, like what they want you, they only want you for one thing, and that's it.
Mm. That's good. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
And I also had to understand that my dad is going to talk about my mom like she's just another woman.
Yeah.
My mom is only my mom to me. I had to get over that too.
Man.
I had to get over that too. And that was crazy. That was wild.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging that. And to keep it real, I still haven't had the conversation. I really wish I could have the conversation with him. But that part of it, I really, really had to understand. And I think that's probably why I'm, aside from the fact that I've reached out to him and he hasn't reached back out to me, I'm real hesitant about that, because to hear a man talk about my mom like she's just a regular woman is going to be weird to me.
Right.
It's just going to be weird to me.
Yeah. Man, you guys see, you guys are broaching a deeper level of this conversation, and I think it's important for everybody to understand. First and foremost, I want to make sure I'm crystal clear with everything that I'm saying. Every person is a combination of both their mother and their father. You are the perfect combination of that. You need a clear identity from both. So I want to make sure I'm saying that not one version of the story is more important than the other, but we have to be careful because we can't blame one over the other. Sure, everybody has their own, and I want to make sure I'm clear when I say this. Everybody has their own version of transgressions. That's between them and their maker. That's not for me to hold them accountable for. Whatever took place between my mother and my father, that's not my responsibility. That's their own personal relationship. Where I come into the play is that how we connect with one another. So now, have I attempted to bridge the gap between my father and myself? Have I made sure that the gap between my mother and myself maintains, regardless of what the story on this side comes from? Don't have that conversation from the perspective of accepting the version of blame that is still existing. You understand what I'm saying? And here's the other part. I want to make sure I'm crystal clear. As we get older, we develop a different mindset. That mindset helps us to reflect on some of the things we did in the past, right? I want to make sure I'm crystal clear. There is a version of harmony that takes place in every person. So, what I cannot allow myself to do is exist in the space of guilt that another person may have because of what they did in the past. So, I think it's perfectly clear. The thing that we should seek to do is have a healthy relationship with our parents. That's it. Whatever their relationship look like, that's not my responsibility. That's not my fault. I don't own either or. I want to make sure I'm saying that because sometimes we get caught up into the story, and the story drives us down a path of separating ourselves from the other parent. And you need that other parent to have a clear definition. Now, I say that to say this, and then I want to turn it over to you guys and kind of help me to understand, or help everybody to understand what that looks like. And then I want to make sure I acknowledge, the people that's in the chat, because they're putting some great information in there. For me, I will say that I definitely made the effort. However, I will say that the thing I was looking for, and you guys heard me talk about the Uncle Brigade. So if I couldn't get it from him, I got it from the people who were closest to him, his brothers and his sisters. They helped me to understand some things. Now, I want to make sure I'm clear. It's not that that door is not still open. That door will always remain open as long as both of us have breath. But I can't be the one to shoulder every bit of the responsibility to ensure we have a relationship. You understand what I'm saying? Me and my mother, we talk all the time. In fact, I have a standing appointment with my mother to talk every Saturday morning. She gets at a minimum 1 hour of my time on that day, and then periodically we connect throughout the week. So that conversation, that relationship is intact. On this side, I want to make sure that it is intact, but I can't force anybody to do something that they're not, number one, willing to do, or they're not necessarily in the emotional space to handle, because that's a difficult conversation. I don't want you to atone for your relationship. That's not the conversation we're having. I need to have a better understanding of who I am. That's all it is. So when I say that, I want to make sure I'm clear. There is no fault in the midst of the story, right? There is no fault. It's just awareness. And if we look at it from that perspective, we are seeking to become more aware of who we are as men. And then the parent is seeking to become more aware of who they are, of who you are, and the great and wonderful things that you've done. So with that being said, I turn it over to my brothers, man, and just kind of share what that looks like for you guys.
I don't know.
Well, I I think I'm looking at Joel and Tawame's statements and everything, and I'm realizing now after I got grown and I was divorced, I realized that my parents and whatever they went through, it wasn't about me. It was about them and where they were in life. And I've come to realize after I was divorced that when you cut the relationship with the parent, when the parents cut the relationship, you bleed on the kids.
Mm.
So when you bleed on the kids, they have to learn how to deal with these things. Like Joel was saying, how his mother was. Now, my mother and my father both had some issues that I held on to. I held on to them, and I had a great disdain for them because of how they lived. But I came to realize after I was grown and I had made some mistakes and everything that where they were at that time, they didn't know how to handle it. They didn't have access to therapists and all these other things to help them out of those situations. So I got what they got, what they were able to give. It was their best. Now, where I am, when you know better, you do better. So that's why I told you a couple of weeks ago, I had to apologize to my children for my role in everything. And I wasn't all wrong, and their mother wasn't all wrong. And I had to make sure, like I always make sure that no matter what's going on, I never allowed my children to disrespect their mother. If she was wrong, it's two left shoes. I'm not going to talk bad about her in front of you, and I'm not going to allow you to talk bad about it, because I would always tell them, you have one mother.
There you go.
You honor your mother. If she's wrong, she's wrong. Cool. You ain't got to be all up in her face and everything like that. But when it comes to sometimes loving people from a distance means that I love you, I will give you whatever, but I will not I won't lower myself to to get into whatever it is that you're into and let it rule me so that I have a hatred for you, because then it runs me and it's in my heart and not yours. It's not stopping you from anything, but it's stopping me from progress.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And you know what? I think what you said, I think, and I don't want to speak for people that are listening, but I think one of the most important things I heard you say just now is that when we sever our relationship, we bleed on the children. That, my friend, is a profound fact. Every child goes through a version of trauma whenever mom and daddy separate. We have to understand that. However, one of the things that I also believe that we need to make sure that we understand is that when we separate, we don't necessarily separate from the child. In fact, we need to be intentional that we don't separate from the child.
Mhm.
So we didn't get along. It didn't work. I'm sorry. I apologize. At the end of the day, when you look at the big picture, it happens. You know what I'm saying? It's all about harmonizing relationships and, finding a way to cohabitate and exist in each other's space. On the other side of that coin, one of the things I want to make sure that we are clear on, if the two adults didn't work, we still have a responsibility to that child, which requires us to make that child more important than the trauma that we experience from separating in relationship.
Mhm. And we can't. Gaddy said that we can't separate the other parent from the child. That's a definite truth because you see a lot of mothers will hold on to that hurt and they identify what they do
We
is they paint a
we're
picture of
used as
you.
pawns.
Yeah. And they paint a picture of you. Your daddy ain't this and your daddy ain't that. And he
And
out
I'm
there with
saying we because I was a pawn.
yeah, taking
We are
care of them other
used as
kids.
pawns.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And,
Let me
and
shut up because
that
I'm about to go down a whole.
Nah,
you can, but you can tell that you are. It's something in you that's where you've experienced some of this, and
yeah,
that's what I think we come here for because we all have experiences. Like my
yeah,
mother and father, they got married the same year I was born. They ain't been together in over 30 years, but they ain't divorced.
mm,
They still together. It's like,
yeah,
okay, why you I mean, just pay a little change and go down if you really,
yeah,
but I won't. Me and my sister, we definitely don't allow either one of them to talk about or denigrate the other
absolutely.
because that's still my parent. That's my mother. That's my father. Me and her, we can talk bad about them both, but no, I'm just kidding. But we don't allow the parents to. Nah, nope, you're not gonna talk bad about them to me.
Yeah.
Not a
And,
vengeance issue.
and I think that's important to say. So, first and foremost, um, we come to a point to understand like, sure, everybody has to learn to deal with pain the way that works for them. And sometimes what you need to understand is that in the beginning, we may not have necessarily, we don't necessarily have the best blueprint to handle pain. And so sometimes what you will find is that some people, and I don't want to call any version of person in this conversation, but some people find it easier to talk about their situation from the viewpoint of their pain. And unfortunately, the easiest and most accessible audience that they have is their children.
Yeah,
But here's the damage behind that conversation. You are extending the pain that you have through you to the child. So now that child gets to look at their parent, who, by the way, they actually love, right? Regardless of what happened with you and them, they actually love the other parent. And what ends up happening is they start viewing that other parent through the lens of the pain that was instilled in them. And so then it comes to a point at a certain age that they start to have a small degree of regret because that parent didn't necessarily view them, right? They start comparing now. I see what you did to mama. Now, I see what you did to daddy, right? I don't want to make this gender specific. I see what you did to mama, or I see what you did to daddy, and now I see you turned around and did the exact same thing to me. But the other side of that conversation is sometimes there is a degree of embarrassment that exists because we automatically believe that that's what's being happened. That's what's actually happening. Whether it's happening or not, we believe it's happening. So there's a degree of embarrassment to actually go and talk to that child because now you feel you're going to be judged by what you did. Here's the truth that I want to make sure I say. Forget all of that. That child is way more important than the little bit of embarrassment that you feel for your past behavior. I want to make sure I'm saying that 100% because my brother makes a very valid point. And what you're hearing as he's expressing it is that, nobody ever kind of lifted me up and made the extra effort to connect with me. I needed that. In fact, every last person on this panel can say the same thing. We needed that. Another piece I want to add is just because a person's in the house doesn't necessarily mean they were in the house.
Right.
Again, just talking from different perspectives, right? Because we're only going to get to the point of solving problems once we get to the point of honestly identifying the problem exists. Just because a person is in the house doesn't mean that they're in the house. I need you if you're in the house as my father. I need you if you're in the house as my mother. Not just existing and paying bills, but talking to me, pouring into me, helping me to understand that the world is waiting for me to explore.
Oh man, and see, women. I can say women because I'm speaking from me.
I got you.
Uh, they will kind of form your identity by trying to make you out to be the husband that they wanted
Mm,
as their son. But in turn, what they do is make you worse than their father was. So when it comes to the who you identify with, oh, you the man of the house. You ain't paying no bills, but you the man of the house. You have no responsibility, but you the man of the house.
yeah.
Oh, you gonna be this. And then what they do is when another woman gravitates towards that young man, he can be wrong as two left shoes. She will always side with his wrong.
Mm,
And that's wrong because you got a lot of young boys out here doing dirt. My grandmother did it. My grandmother, somebody could say they got pictures, they got a video of me doing it, but no, not him.
that wasn't him.
So I'm like, you're right, Granny. You tell me going somewhere. But it taught me that I could get away with stuff if I, under my grandmother, and it taught me lessons that I would have to get over later on in life, and lessons that women taught me how to get over on other women.
Mm, mm, that was good.
You brought up the son husband aspect of this. I'm gonna dive into that because I used to be one.
Hmm.
And when I started walking my own path, it felt like I was breaking up with a girl
Right.
when I was removing myself from the coddling and the overbearingness of my mother. I felt like I was going through a bad breakup. And I'm like, I shouldn't even be thinking this. You and my mom, what is wrong with you? And you have a husband. So
Yeah.
why do I feel like I'm breaking up with you or I'm a side dude? Like, really? That's really what it is?
Wow.
That's and this is all stuff that products of single mom homes who did not have that father there and wants to know what that father was or is. These are the kinds of things that we go through. We have an unhealthy relationship with our mom. It's not a mama son relationship. It's really not.
Yeah.
It's not. And you have and it just comes to the point where it's just unhealthy, and you know it's unhealthy. And at times I felt like I was being disrespectful because that's my
Yeah.
mom. But on the flip side of that, it's like I got to figure out what this is, why I am the way that I am, and how I got to be here in the first place. And you got to get out of the way of that. Sorry, mom, I still love you, but move. I got to go
Yeah.
figure this out. And I got to go do this my way. I can't keep looking at this man through your eyes. I can't do
Mm,
that because to be real, that's disrespectful to him. Because you're not me looking at my biological father through my mom's eyes doesn't even give him the opportunity to show me who he really is.
mm.
This is what we go through. It's
I love
trash.
it.
It's
Yeah.
trash.
I love it. And I'm glad you said it. And I want to make sure that we're crystal clear. It's not the persona, it's the position. Because I think what has happened over the years is that there has been a strategic plot against fatherhood that prevents us from having a good perspective of the father himself. That's my perspective. I want to make sure I'm saying it that way. In other words, that's my opinion, right? Because we have downplayed the idea of fatherhood, we have a very skewed perspective of who the father himself is. So as we're having this conversation, we're just sharing some things that we have learned over the years. It's not necessarily comfortable, but it is necessary because again, our goal is to help the younger men, right? The young teenagers that exist out there that are being raised by mothers whose fathers are not necessarily there. Sometimes we may have to help them out. And I'll be honest with you, initially that man may not necessarily be receptive of you reaching out to them. But here's the deal: your son needs that. Your son needs him to get over his ego and actually pick up the phone, call him, actually come and spend some time with him, all of that thing. Now, here's the deal: I want to kind of, I don't want to, not address the people in the comments, man, because they're putting out some great information. And I, for one, I want to make sure I appreciate each and every last one of them. So, Joe, brother, I appreciate you, man. You putting in some good information. Tawami Gaddy, always great to see you, my friend. Um, and I mean, you guys are putting it out there. Joel said almost 4 years ago, he deleted Facebook, Instagram, and all of that. He said, I think a great way to define your identity is to cut out the noise. We live in an information age, and I think people are drowned out by that noise. Oh my God, you are so right. Like you have CNN, you got MSNBC, you got coworkers who look at the news and read the newspaper. You got Instagram, you got Facebook. And I don't know why it just seems like Twitter has become another version of CNN these days. There is nothing but bad information. Go ahead, Chris. I don't want to shut it off, man. Go ahead, brother.
No, you brought up Twitter, and I was just gonna say Twitter is such a cesspool. Twitter is a cesspool. Yeah. A whole bunch of keyboard warriors who have a bunch of opinions. And if you mad at their opinion, they can put you in a group.
Yeah.
It's like not believe it's like going outside of the box and actually living in the real world instead of looking at your phone for information is considered a bad thing now. And if you don't believe what you see on your phone, you all of a sudden are a bad person. And they can put you in this group of isms or ists that's out there that you don't even really belong to. You just formulated an opinion based off of what you see in the real world because you know this digital age, this digital stuff is not real. We live in the age of facades now. Most of these people on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they fronting. I used to do credit repair in my city, and I see people on Facebook that I know ain't got it, stunting like they got it. And I really want to go on I really want to go on there and be like, hey, yo, son, I've seen your credit report. Hey, young lady, I've seen your credit report. I know you've had 2 bankruptcies and 3 repos on your credit report, and you really sitting here stunting because you got this high dollar job. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The real world starts outside. It's outside. It's not in your phone. It's not on your computer screen. It's not on your television. Go outside, meet people, and formulate your own opinion. And to keep it real, people really aren't that bad. No. For the most part, people really are not that bad. They're really not. But let me get off my soapbox.
Oh my God. No, I agree with you, brother. And so I have a philosophy and I keep this thing, recycling in my head because it helps me to see that there's always hope in humanity. And again, no one is as bad as they think they are, but they're not as great as they think they are either. So when we look at a person, I know you said that people aren't that bad. For me, and I want to make sure I'm clear, I don't believe that there's any such thing as bad people. I think it's people who have an issue harmonizing with their emotions that they're experiencing, and those recycled emotions produce bad behavior. And so I've seen that on countless occasions, man. And I thank you for sharing that because I think you're absolutely right. Joel, keep the information coming, brother. I love what you're saying. Keep it up. Tawami, again, he's putting out some great information. He said, Mama did what she had to do. Now we have to do what we have to do to put it back in order. He's absolutely correct. And that's part of
No, he's not.
Okay.
No, he's not.
Go ahead, sir.
No.
Mama didn't have to do none of the stuff that she did. Everything she did was a choice. Everything is choice. She didn't have to do that. She chose to do that. And then she painted this picture that she had to do it. This is why the conversation with the other parent is difficult, because mama will say, I brought you in this world. I did all of this for you. So you are supposed to love me. And you're supposed to go along with everything that I do. You didn't have to do that. You really didn't. You could have made it work with that man.
Well, I think that's kind of situational, Chris, because some things like with my like take my parents, you know, you talking substance abuse users, both sides. So it made better sense to separate herself. Like sometimes we can stay in toxic environments too long.
Yeah.
And anytime you're in a toxic environment, it gets on you and you become toxic. So you can't even be your best self. And I understand what you're saying, that we all have choices in each thing
Whether
that
it's
we
good or whether it's bad,
right,
whether it's
right,
good for the situation or it's bad for the situation,
right,
Right.
it is still choice.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Everybody has a choice. You can choose to do this or you can choose to do this. Problem is, a lot of people choose to do the wrong thing and then get upset when they're held accountable for that wrong thing. Or they do the right thing and the people that are doing the wrong thing are look at you doing the right thing like you the bad person. You
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? Like, this is why I said this whole society, this whole social media, mainstream media age is trash. It
Yeah.
really is. But
Here,
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Roland.
Right.
Sometimes you have to make decisions that's good for the whole.
right.
Two people that are not meant to be together shouldn't be together. You understand
Right.
what I'm saying? Or if one person doesn't want to be there,
Right.
they shouldn't be there. But at the end of the day, if we base level common denominator it, because that's how I am, I look at it from a base level and I pull myself out of it.
Yeah.
It's still choice, good or
Okay.
bad.
Right.
Yeah. Here's why I like what you're saying, right? Because first and foremost, wherever a person finds themselves at, what you will find is that they'll do what they feel is the best case or the best course of action for them. Now, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, it is a choice. So you're absolutely correct. But they felt it was the best choice. And as they get older, I kind of talked about it previously, right? As they get older, they realize that that probably wasn't the best choice to make, but the choice is already made. This is where I am. And unfortunately, I may have damaged some people along the way. Go ahead, Roland. You go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think because while we're growing up, a lot of us got married, hitched, people pregnant, and all this other stuff while we were young. You were
Mhm.
young, dumb, and full of and you didn't necessarily know how to deal with or handle situations, but you were already in it. So you made that choice and you tried to stick it out. Then a lot of us had a give up mentality way too soon.
Yeah.
So because we didn't have somebody in our ear, a mature person to say, "Baby, sit down, let's talk. Listen, what's your part in this?" And bring the two together so that we can see a better picture.
Yeah.
And we bled over into the kids. And then when we got older, we were like, "Man, I made some dumb decisions in life."
Yeah,
But
man.
but when you know better, you do better.
Right.
And going forward, now we have to make sure we teach the younger generation, you don't have to do this.
No.
Simply because you did that doesn't mean it's now a roadmap of failure, of future failures.
Right. And I want to add to what you're saying because I think you're spot on, right? One of the things that I know exists, at least that I've experienced, and I don't know if you guys experienced, by all means, share your experience with me, but it is almost like a black eye, where I'm from, to actually go through a divorce. It's like you're going to walk through the rest of your life with like a scarlet letter. So what people do is they hold on because let's just be honest, we made bad decisions with some of the mates that we tied ourselves with in the past because we viewed them through the wrong perspective. I'm just being honest. That's what actually happened. No one ever told me about purpose. No one ever told me about calling. No one ever told me that those are the two things that I need to use so that I can identify my mate. I had no clue of that. So with that being said, I just did what I thought what I was supposed to do. And if it didn't work out, well, you got a divorce. You're such a bad guy. What did you do? Why got to be me? You understand what I'm saying? So hearing what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense because again, it kind of goes back to that idea. Once we decide to grow, then we can lean on what Chris is talking about. We can lean on the idea that every decision that I made in my life, I am held accountable for it. Therefore, on the other side of that, whatever pain that I experienced, at some place had a portion of the decision making that participated in it. And so we have to get to that point. That means I can't go around and say, hey, it's Roland's fault I'm going through this, or it's Chris' fault that this actually happened. Even if Roland and Chris is 90% of the reason why it happened, I am still responsible for my 10%. And so if I view that 10% by what are the things that I need to do better, so forth and so on, then now I can grow based upon that. And going back to what you're saying, Roland, we have to, and again, we have to be pillars of positive information into ear of those people who don't have that information, right? Help them to understand, so, okay, I got this is what it looks like right now, but let's look at the other side of the coin. What can you extract from this information that actually moves you to a better place of existence? What is the better thing for you to do right now instead of lashing out, yelling, arguing, fussing, and cussing? And I think if we do that, then what we'll do is we can get back to that point of, yes, we don't have to do that. We can choose to make the decision that is actually beneficial for everybody.
And that goes into finding your identity as a man, holding yourself accountable for the situation that you're in, whether you are completely at fault or not.
Yes, sir.
You still were there. So figure out why you were there and don't do it again, because you see the end result and you know the end result isn't something that you want. Or you see the end result and it's a positive thing, keep doing that positive thing. It's all about this is why when we have conversations like this, I pull myself out of it and I look at it from a subjective point of view. I have to. I don't have a choice. You understand what I'm saying? Because if I were looking at it from my own lens, then I put my own thought processes, my own teachings, and my own perspective into it instead of looking at it like, all right, what would I tell somebody that wasn't me that's in this situation if I were looking at it from the outside?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? That all falls into figuring out who you are as a man. And it starts, to keep it real, it starts the moment you can formulate your own opinions about life. And you can't, and my thought process behind that is I can't allow what I see outside of me to determine how I think about life, because I'm looking at your life like that's your life, but that ain't mine. What you're doing is cool, but that ain't me. You know what I'm saying? Or what you're doing is cool. I want to do that. Teach me how to do that. As long as I ain't hurt nobody and I ain't breaking no laws, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? But to bring it all back, self-accountability and self-reflection is all a part of figuring out who you are as a man and discovering your identity as a man. And self-responsibility, self-accountability, and self-reflection is it's the hardest thing you can do as a man. It's terrible. It sucks. It's depressing. It's embarrassing, but you have to go through it because that's how you figure out who you are as a man, and that's how you figure out what steps you need to take to be a better one.
And that's why it's a necessity to have another man to not necessarily sit you down, but to walk you through actually being a man, letting you know that a man takes responsibility for everything in his house, the ups, the downs, the wrongs, the rights. If it goes wrong in your house, you are responsible, period. Not, oh, well, she did this or this happened. And no, you're responsible. When you take that I'm responsible role, that lead, then it lets everybody in the household know that, okay, I have to live up to that standard, not do the foolishness that I want to do, because I have somebody to answer to that is going to take everything and say, okay, how can we fix this? How can we make it better? And that's what men need to do, and stop trying to blame, well, your mama this, or well, if you wouldn't have did that, or no, my job ain't to blame my mama, ain't to blame my daddy, ain't to blame nobody else. In my house, I got to take responsibility. If the grass ain't cut and I got kids age to cut it, if it didn't get cut, it's my fault. Now I got to go give some encouragement to some kids, but they got to do it. But that's a part of being. If you want to be the man, you got to be the man. You ain't don't. A lot of people, like y'all were talking earlier, get on Twitter and all this, and they talk about being the man. Sometimes talking about being the man, they say, "I failed you. I let you down." And once it happened with my grandson. My grandson came over one time, and he was mad because the girls wouldn't let him jump on the trampoline by himself. He was smaller than them, And then he called himself mad. So he said, I hate y'all. Talking about all the kids. So I told him, I said, boy, we don't talk like that around here. And he said something smart. And I said, boy, I beat your tail. And this is what I said. And then he said, no, you won't. So I commenced, I had on my slides. So I took one of the slides off and I kindly walked over to him. With a smile, I told him, I will never lie to you. So as I grabbed him up and I'm beating him with the doggone shoe, and if y'all want to come see me, they know my address. But
I was about to say, you about to don't get canceled.
Hey, I'm hitting his bottom side with the shoe. Yes, the slide. And as I'm whipping him, I'm telling him, I will never lie to you. If I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. See, a lot of parents, what they do is they say 1, 2, 3. I'm not doing no countdown. I'm not doing none of that time out. And no, you correct the problem where it is, then you won't have a problem later. That's the problem now. We want to time out and pacify and all that other stuff. No, you don't abuse children, but you make corrections on the spot. Because once you allow that standard to be reset, you just establish a new standard.
Yeah, and I kind of want to spin off of what you said, man. You said a lot of great things here. You made mention of being responsible. Like, so if I'm the man in the house, I'm responsible for this and responsible for that. I want to make sure I'm crystal clear, because I think a lot of times society have taken that idea, man of the house, and just went straight in left field with it. No man rules his house with an iron fist. Let's just be honest. This isn't slavery, and we're not trying to make you submit to our will. That's not what it is. We're looking at how we can exist, right? Exist under some sort of structure. Every company has a boss. Every boss has somebody that they're responsible to. So when we go back and look at just a common structure that we believe in, and I want to make sure I'm clear when I say that. If you don't believe in that, you don't necessarily have to subscribe to what it is I'm saying. But what we believe in, we believe that there's a common structure within the household. That structure helps to put me in a position so I can provide and protect my family. That's the thing I want to make sure I understand. Now, does that mean that I get to sit down behind the couch and flip the channel and say, go do this and go do that and bring me something to drink? And no, that's that. I don't know any man in my circle that does that. However, what we do is we provide guidance, we provide structure, we provide some sort of intellect that we learn through the silly mistakes that we made in our life. We don't share the silly mistakes, we share the lessons learned. We also share the fact that we're human as well. I don't want to give the idea that, oh, well, men just share the fact that they're Superman. No. That's not even close to being true. Whenever we understand our child is going through, son, I understand exactly what you're going through because I did that years ago as well. Here's the thing I learned from that. So now what we have is an organizational structure in the house. And that organizational structure helps us to, number one, pour into those children to such a degree that they begin life light years beyond where we began. So it doesn't matter where you started out. You have a responsibility to take your child and slingshot them far beyond where you started from. And you do that through the constant conversation, the heartfelt discussions that you have with those children. And those things help them to realize that, you know what, my dad is actually pretty cool. Yeah, he can be hard sometimes, but I understand that he's only hard because he wants the best for me. That being said, shout out to Edgar Fuentes, great guy, great leader, great friend, great father, great husband. If you want to see more from Edgar Fuentes, go back and look at our podcast where we talked about accountable leadership. I'm telling you, he hit the nails on the head. So I want to read his statement as well, because his statement kind of coincides with everything that we're talking about. He said, most, if not all, of these issues can easily be associated with immaturity. The more we live, the more we learn how to deal with these issues in life. And he is absolutely right. Every problem that you encounter in your life only exists because there's a lesson you're supposed to learn from it. So it doesn't matter what the problem is. You have to decipher the lesson so that you can extend the lessons learned to your children and also to your spouse. I don't want to leave that out. Gentlemen, you guys have been fun. I'm sorry, Roland, go ahead. You're about to say something.
No, I'm just listening because
okay.
What I can call him Edgar now. Nah. He'll feel funny, what top Major Fuentes, what he said was spot on, because we have to, from the time that they can talk, they can understand the level of responsibility. We have to keep on adding to that responsibility. And that's what we fail to do as parents when we allow these children to run roughshod. The kids, you got to have your fun, you got to have your playtime. But when I was talking to my daughter yesterday, when the kids came home, I'm asking, because I'm parenting a parent. So I'm like, okay, did they do their homework? Did they do this? Before they can get on devices, you have responsibilities. You don't just come home and do what you want to do. And that's how you establish roles within the household. When I say this is how we move, we do homework first. We got to make sure these things are done before you can have your playtime. When you establish that responsibility in these boys young, then when they get older, they don't just think they can just run roughshod over you.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, man, these conversations go by so fast. I'm looking at the time like, my goodness. I mean, they're so good and they're so fruitful. Here's the thing I want us to do right now, because we're coming close to the end of our time here, because I want to make sure that all of this is linked back into the title. So the title is defining your son's identity. So for those of us who have children, right, I want to kind of lean into that, and not so much as not just what you do now, but what are some of the best ways to do it. For those of us who don't have a child, if you had a child right now, what would be some of the things that you do? And the idea is, what is the best thing that we can do to help that child understand who they are? So, Chris, I'm gonna allow you to think about that for a second. Roland is seasoned, so I want to kind of give Roland the floor first, right? And let that brother kind of help us to understand some of the best things we can do to help a young man understand his identity.
Just to be clear and open and honest, I am working on rectifying my relationship with my son, because me and his mother had a divorce. Things didn't work out. Now we're good. Matter of fact, she's on here somewhere listening in. And with our son, I wasn't mature enough to realize the impact that my absence was having on him. And I didn't necessarily know how to reach out. I didn't, and all of those are excuses. And I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know how to do this, but a telephone can work. And I think starting off with just simple communication, simple talks, communication, and being consistent in their lives, that'll help with you establishing something. So now when you start to talk about roles and identity, he doesn't have to look towards his mother. He doesn't have to look towards whomever. He can say, okay, well, my father set this role. And when you can start to learn your father, learn who he is, then you can take little bits and pieces that you need, because all fathers aren't perfect and none of us are perfect, but there's something to be taken from each parent to where it can enhance your parenting and growth as a person. Because in my head, I can say, man, I'm a perfect parent. But to some of my girls, I was there for this, I was there for that, but then my son's like, dang, I wasn't there for this. I wasn't there for that. So as a parent, you have to look in the mirror daily and say, man, where have I failed? Where do I need help? Where do I need another parent to come along and undergird me, where I can have some strength in moving forward with this child? Because we all have to admit that we don't know everything, but we have to be able to listen to people, even though they may not have everything going on. They have something that they can instill in us to where it can benefit us, where we can have a fruitful relationship with our kids.
Man, that was so good. It's like I really want to tell you to say that again, right? So I can record it this time. No, I'm joking. Like all of this is recorded, so I'm joking. But that was just amazing, because you know what? I can take everything you say and say, "Yep, that's me. That's me." And here's the funny thing about it: what you said resonates with several men. of our age or some even older. So I love it because your transparency opens the door for us to actually see ourselves. So thank you for that. And again, like I said, that's me. That was me. Here's the thing that I've learned, especially with my oldest son, right? When I was talking earlier in reference to the embarrassment, yeah, that was me. I was too embarrassed to do too much heavy lifting. I still reached out. Whenever I visited, I still picked them up. Him, my son and my daughter. I still picked them up and spent some time with them. But when I left, it was like I would reach out, but it's not like I really put too much effort and energy into it. And so here it is in my older years, and again, learning from the lessons, or learning from life lessons. One of the things that I want to share is that as a father, as an adult, you should view your house as a young adult training facility. Now, what do I mean when I say that? No, when they come out the womb, that they're adults? Absolutely not. What you should look at it is that every stage of their life has a developmental aspect to it that prepares them for the next stage of the life that they're going to come to. So when I say the adult training facility, what you have to understand is that every stage is of significant value. So as parents, what we have to do is be present in that stage so that we can inject the necessary levels of information, the necessary level of learnings that they can resonate them to make them successful at that stage of development. That's key. And that's the thing I didn't necessarily get until later. So when I say this, I want everybody to understand if your child is a young child, let them resonate in the space of being a young child. Sometimes as fathers, one of the most fun things for us to do is get down and be a young child again. You know what I'm saying? But at that stage, what we're doing is projecting the lessons that we learned from that stage as well. I'll be honest with you. I was that father. I didn't mind making a fool of myself. I got videos, bro, of me actually dancing. I can't remember the name of the game. It was on Xbox. Man, I was after deployment. We came back. Man, I'm in the living room dancing, bro. I looked like a straight up fool, but guess what? I didn't care because I wanted my kids to understand that I'm here. I would dumb myself down. And I don't want to say dumb myself down, but I mean, I didn't mind looking foolish. I would look foolish because they enjoyed it. And I think a lot of times what we need to do is come off our mountaintop, right? I want to say that again, come off our mountaintop and actually get down with them on their level and have fun at their level so that their memories can resonate. Say, you know what? My dad used to get that hand and jam with us. Like my dad used to dance back in the days. Those are fun memories. But then as they get older, now you start having those conversations. Again, getting back to helping them to understand those things that you learned, right? Don't let them fumble through life and have to learn the same lessons. Get down, help them to understand at their level, especially when you start talking to, those, females. When it comes down to, they're going through puberty, they're starting to feed females differently. Because first, when they were younger, they were just like boys. They were just different. Like, now it's different. Like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So now you got to start having those conversations. So help them to harmonize with what they're feeling. Just like we talked last week, how to deal with that sexual energy. They get that from you, dad, right? They start to understand what that sexual energy look like. And then you can help them see things differently that maybe you didn't get from your father. Don't perpetuate the cycle. You be the change so that that child can learn the necessary, valuable lessons. So when they hit adulthood, they are better positioned than what we really were. And that's my my thoughts. Brother Chris, I turn it over to you, my friend. And I know this is a little bit different. That's why I wanted to let you go last. If you had a child, what were some of the lessons that you would kind of instill in them?
I would, if I had a child, I would break my neck to build a level of trust between me and that child where that child can come to me with anything. Anything. I think that's where the disconnect is. Your child, like I said before, once that child comes into this world, it becomes your obligation as a parent to make sure that that child has the best opportunity to be the most productive child, preteen, teenager, grown up that they can be. It's on you. What I would do is just let them know that they can come to me. Yes, I'm gonna be mad. It's a human thing. If you do something dumb and you come to me, yes, I'm gonna be mad. I might curse you out, but it's gonna be out of love. And I guess I would just be there.
Yeah.
The presence of a father is the presence of a father is more important than mainstream media is painted out to be. And I really wish this narrative would go away because we're starting to see the fruits of single single parent homes. We're starting to
Mm.
Yeah.
see it. We're
Yeah.
starting to see how lost the men are. We're starting to see how lost the little girls are. We're starting to see we're starting to see what it's like for children to be maintained and not actually raised.
Mm.
I want to be that parent that raises my child. I'm going to be there. Come to me if you need anything. Come to me if you need to talk. I'm not going to lecture you. I'm just going to say, hey, what's on your mind? And let's talk. I'll
Yeah.
come down to your level. We could play Dance Dance Revolution. We could play Mario Kart. We could play Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat after you finish your homework. We can do all of those things. But I'm also going to let my child know, hey, you have responsibilities too.
Yeah.
You got to do these things and then we can do these things. The fun comes last. The fun is a
Yeah.
byproduct, but you got things you need to do. And I got your back. As long as you're
Yeah.
not doing nothing stupid, I got your back. And I'm going to be honest with you about the dumb stuff that I did so that way you don't do it.
There you go.
So I guess that's where I would leave it. I and it's weird to have that question posed to me because I don't have any children. So I'm
Yeah.
like the cool uncle, but I don't have any like children of my own. So I don't know. It's easy to say what I would do. You understand what I'm saying? It's easy to say what I would do, but I've never been in that position to actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's really where I am at base level. I would do all of the things that my biological father didn't do. I would be there. I would help you. I'm not gonna give you everything. Let's map out a plan so that way you could get it yourself, and then you could feel like you did something, and then you can carry that on life and do stuff.
Yeah. I
I
love
guess
it.
that's where I would leave it.
I love it, man. Man, that was so good. Listen, man, I want to make sure that I address this because you said, it's a strange question for you because you don't have any kids. It's probably the best question for you at this stage because now you're thinking into what you would actually do when you do have one. So, man, and again, if I had that question posed to me when I was younger, I would get into the thought process of what fatherhood looked like instead of just, trial by fire and figuring it out. Again, appreciate all the people in the chat. Joel, thank you, my friend, because that's the game. Dance Central. Bro, I used to get it in with Dance Central, my kids, man. Don't judge me. I'm just being honest. I loved it. You know what I'm saying?
Listen,
We
I
gonna
would
we
have
gonna we
paid
gonna
money
see.
to be a fly on the wall to see that.
Hey,
I,
man,
I,
if
I thought he was about to do it now.
no, I'm not going to do it right now. If y'all, hey, if y'all nice, I might send it to you. Hey, so
Oh shoot.
Some Major Fuentes is still dropping science over here, man. He
I
said
see.
what I did as a young father is way different from what I would do now, and I agree with him 100% because I shared before you, I made some bad decisions. I wasn't perfect, not even close. In fact, I think, Roland, I'm stealing your phrase. I think I'm better now as a grandfather than I ever was as a father. But
Right.
to continue what he is saying, he said, experience and life lessons made me a better person, therefore, a better parent. Facts. I can't deny that 100%. I am definitely on board. Gaddis says, what I do as a young father is I pair with an older father, Roland to be exact, to pull it from and hear what he did right and wrong. And that's the idea behind why we do what we do every Friday night right here. We want to be those older fathers, right? Who actually been through life, like Sergeant Major Fuentes says. We've made some mistakes. We're sharing those mistakes with you guys. We want you guys to learn from our mistakes so that for those young men who have not experienced the joys of fatherhood, you can now hear those things. For those older men who actually have children that you are not connected with, hey man, pick up the phone. Nobody gonna judge you. I promise. Do that. Reach out to them. Tell them you love them.
He
Don't
might want
don't.
to fight you.
Hey, one
He
fight.
might want to fight you. Go ahead and square up with him. Get it all out your system. And then after that, shake his hand and say, hey, I'm sorry for not being there. Let's move on.
See, and one of the
Get
ways,
out your
like
ego. What's wrong with you?
like
Sorry.
Tawami, he was over to the house. He had, had the baby over to the house. Him and his wife over to the house, and the baby about 5-6 months, and like the baby just, I'm like, y'all ain't feeding this baby yet. Now me as a parent, and you got to know who you can have this type of relationship with. So now I text the baby. Now the baby eating stuff that I'm like, no, this baby about to eat. So for one, she's about to be teething. So I'm
Yeah.
giving her stuff. They tell me, oh, she eat? Yeah, she eating. You just have to feed her. But when you don't have anybody there to help guide it, then the baby gonna be on milk until she 2.
Yeah.
But then since, I'm involved in the life, so I can help, I can assist. I can say, no, it's time for potty training. No, it's time for this, it's time for that. Because there are stages in children's lives that I've been through a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And younger parents are going through.
Yeah. Man, that's good. Absolutely. And that kind of goes back to what again, Edgar still dropping knowledge, man. Being present is a must. It is definitely a must, right? We still understand that regardless of how great of a relationship we have with our kids, they will always look outside that relationship for opinions.
That's
Absolutely. We just got to make sure that we give them a good foundation so that they can sift through good opinions versus bad opinions. And I think that's important. Great, Chris. I'm sorry.
Your child would rather have an opinion from somebody that actually loves them than somebody that doesn't.
Yeah.
They know that as a father, you love them. So
Yeah.
you're not going to steer them wrong.
I,
Talk to
I
your
don't know. I don't
kids.
know. Some kids be, I know we can be hard headed, and we sometimes your parents
Hard
can
head
say
make a soft ass. Ain't that what grandmama used to say?
all day long.
I may have heard that one.
I may have felt that one. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're right. And then but then later on, after they fall, you be like, man, my daddy told me that.
Yep.
My grandma told me that. My mama told me that.
Absolutely.
Because when they can be talking, we don't hear it, but then their friends come and say something that sound cool. They ain't been through nothing, but we gonna choose to do that, and we gonna fall on our face. And then that's when you come not with a sense of arrogance, but with a
Mm,
sense of, okay, now this is why I told you not to do this.
absolutely.
And this is why I said you have to talk to your kids on their level. It can't come off as a lecture. Because if it
Right.
comes off as a lecture, it's going to be like, oh, daddy just telling me this because daddy don't want me to do this. Instead of
Right.
saying, hey, man, listen, I know you want to do this. Here's what I did the same thing. And here's what happened. Do you really want to go down this road?
Yeah.
It can't be a lecture. You got to talk to them like that. Not like you friends with them, but like you actually care. And not
Yeah.
like you trying to dictate what they should do with their life. They got to know you care. That's all.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to shut up.
Absolutely. No, you're good, man. You're good. Again, I want to make sure I'm honoring all my guests. Shout out to Antoine Christopher, the artist. Love to see you, brother. Always good to have you. Shout out to Latasha Major Wells, one of my classmates from long, 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 long time ago. Great to see you, sister. Shout out to Mr. Massey. Right, love to see you, brother. I appreciate all your information there. Shout out to my mom. She's on. Love your mama. And again, I like I said, I talk with my mother all the time. She has done a great job with some of my with my upbringing. So again, I greatly appreciate her. And again, just we appreciate any and everybody who participates in this information because again, we just want to make sure that we're helping the younger generation. Last but not least, before we close up out of here, I want to kind of lean on what Edgar said here, right? Those outside opinions outside of our relationship. I want to kind of spin from what Chris said, because a lot of times we view the word love through the lens of like. And so if someone says something I don't like, they think I don't love them. That is a false narrative. What we need to do is go back and redefine the word love. Love requires me to tell you something or help you to understand something that will help you, that will benefit you, Unfortunately, sometimes that's not going to come in a shiny box with a bow on top and whatever the case may be. If it is something that benefits you through over the course of time, then it comes from a perspective of love, like Chris was talking about. So I want to make sure I address that. When we start talking about the opinions of outside people, I listen. I love older people, people who have more experience than me, people who's been around. And so I just want to share a conversation I had with a young man this afternoon, man, 70 plus years old, retired Command Sergeant Major McCoy. I love him dearly because one of the things I know for a fact, if you can find patience to sit down and listen to him talk, he's going to tell you a story. In the lines of that story, there's so much wisdom. You can't put a price tag on that. So one of the things I invite everybody to do is kind of harness the energy of older wisdom, because you don't understand the information that they're giving you is for your development, for your progression, simply because they love you. And from the gentleman that's on this panel, that's all we're trying to do. We just want to help create a better society by sharing some things, some lessons that we learned over the course of time. Whether we listen to Command Sergeant Major Fuentes, Command Sergeant Major McCoy, or whether it was my grandfather, whether it's Tawami listening to Brother Roland Walker, whether it was Chris imparting wisdom as he is doing his podcast from across the table. Only thing we want to do is kind of help reshape the narrative so that we can understand that we are better together than we are apart. So from the hosts of the Hearts of Men podcast, again, we're here every Friday night at 8 p.m. and we just want to extend value so that we can consistently create a better environment. So, gentlemen, do you have any last word that you want to share with our audience?
Uh, I said it last time. Mamas move.
I'm
Get
getting a
out the
shirt.
way.
I'm getting a shirt that says that though.
No,
Yeah.
it ain't gonna say that. It's gonna say what he first said.
Yeah, what he first
Get out
said.
the way.
And I'm gonna put your name at the bottom just to let you know.
Mamas, you got to move because that boy going to want to talk to his dad, and his dad going to say some things that might not paint you in the best light, and that ain't your problem. That's his story. Let him tell it, and let your son formulate his own opinion, and don't get mad when he ain't thinking the same way you think. Get out the way. Move. That's all I'm going to say.
There you go.
For me, I'm gonna say, fathers, remember the role you play not only in their mothers' lives, but whatever role you play affects your sons as well as your daughters.
Mm.
So it's a crazy situation when you start to see some of those nasty ways that you have coming up in your daughters. So think about those things when you're doing them, so you won't allow those things to take seed and be buried in your kids, and then later on you see the fruit of it.
Mm. That's good. That's real good. I think my last message is this: fight the concept of complacency. Regardless of where you are, you're only there so that you can learn, that you can grow. The reason why you need to make that decision in your life is because your children is going to need you to give them that next level information that you're going to gain. So again, make your self-development a unselfish task. Develop yourself for the sake of your children. Fathers, pick up the phone, call your child, text them. I don't care. However they receive information, just tell them that you love them. If you just do that alone, right? That's a start. Then make it a habit. And then habitually help them to understand that I'm not perfect. I'm just dad. And I want to be there. So with that being said, man, we appreciate each and every one of you who've actually attended. Again, next week, same time, same channel, 8 p.m. every Friday. Have a blessed weekend.